Hi, I'm Mikaela, and this is an episode of Love Mikaela, a podcast where I talk about literally anything and everything I want to. Today, I wanted to talk about a Japanese drama called I Love You. It's spelled I as in like EYE, like literally like your eyes. So it's I Love You, and I watched it on Netflix. I think you can watch it on Viki, and you can probably find it other places as well. Um, I really liked this drama and I thought it would be appropriate to talk about it during AAPI month. I mean, I talk about the shows that I watch and talk about are mostly Asian dramas anyway, but this one in particular I think is really special and not a favorite of mine, but definitely in my top like 20, maybe top 10. I don't know. I really liked this one. In terms of Japanese dramas, this is like a top 5. It's so good. But yeah, let's just get into it. Sorry, I hit the microphone. So I'll start with the synopsis and then I'll talk about stuff I liked, and then of course I'll warn you when there's a spoiler section. Yeah. You know the drill at this point, hopefully. So the synopsis, this is something I just pulled off of the internet. After an accident, Motomiya Yuri can hear other people's inner voices when she looks into their eyes. So, I love you. Due to these telepathic abilities, Yuri hears people's true feelings that she does not want to know, and she often gets hurt in secret. She becomes afraid of knowing other people's true feelings, and she becomes afraid of showing her true feelings to others as well. She does not get close to people if not necessary and gave up on falling in love. One day, Yuri meets Yoon Tae-oh, a younger Korean student. When they say student, he's like a graduate student, so don't worry. It's not like a crazy age gap or anything. Teo has a bright and friendly personality and is loved by everyone around him due to his innocence. He is straightforward and extremely pure when it comes to love. When she happens to make eye contact with him, she hears his inner thoughts and voice, but it's in Korean. Will Teo's bright and straightforward presence melt Yuri's closed heart, which is unable to reveal her true feelings? Basically, this is so, in my own words, the synopsis, it's basically a show about this girl who gets into an accident, and because of that accident, she can hear people's thoughts when she looks into their eyes. And because of her power, she, like they said in the synopsis I pulled, she's afraid to, like, get to know people and get close to people because she doesn't want to be hurt because she can hear their true thoughts and yada yada yada. And it's about her meeting this guy who she can hear his thoughts because that's her power, but she can't understand them because they're in a different language. And it's the story of their relationship and how they get to know each other and what happens between the two of them. That's basically the plot of the whole thing. It's a simple but interesting plot, and it's easy to follow along with. And the show also isn't that long. It's only 10 episodes, and each episode is like, I think the longest ones are an hour, and then the like normal ones are about 40 minutes or 45 minutes or so. They're all just about an hour or so. So it's not super long, not a huge time commitment. And I think the story is good. I really liked the acting in this because I find that a lot of Japanese dramas, at least in my opinion, tend to be more stiff and dry in terms of the acting. That's just the style that they like over there, and it fits for a lot of the stories that the J dramas tell, that the Japanese dramas tell, and so that's why the acting is like it's just like a style difference. Like if you look at acting in like Korean dramas or Thai dramas or Japanese dramas, Chinese dramas versus like Western media, it's all different because there's different styles. And so because culturally there's differences, right? So it makes sense that there's different styles when it comes to acting. But personally, Japanese dramas, the acting typically isn't my favorite, but I found that in this one, everyone felt like really grounded and natural. It didn't feel as stiff to me, which I really appreciated. Um, I'm gonna go over 5 of the actors that were in this. But truly, I think everyone did a really good job in this drama. Not just the people I'm gonna like go in depth on, but anyway, I'll start with their female lead, Yuri. And she is played by Nikaido Fumi. She was super cute and super bubbly, and she fit the character super well. I don't know if that's how she is in real life. I didn't really watch a ton. I tried to find interviews and like behind the scenes stuff for this show, but it was really hard to find. A lot of it's just in Japanese, doesn't have translations, and I don't speak Japanese well enough to understand what's happening. So, when the actor who played Teo, the Korean character, talked, he would speak in Korean, and then they would subtitle it in Japanese on the interviews that I could find. And I also don't read Japanese well enough to be able to understand it. Unfortunately, I wish I did, but I don't. I'll get there eventually, but not right now. So I couldn't like see a lot in terms of behind the scenes or like what they're like in real life. But when she played the character, she was really bubbly, very bright and really cute, and that was what was needed for this character. She had like really great reactions. I think that was my favorite thing about her acting overall. There are a lot of really cheesy comedic moments in the show. A lot of Japanese shows have these really almost like slapstick like comedy that happens. It's not the same as the like comedy that happens in Korean dramas, but it's its own like thing. But it's like of a similar vein, right? It's not like a highbrow sarcasm like if you were watching like a British show, like that kind of comedy. It's not like that. It's very much like in your face. It's really cheesy. They really ham it up. They use sound effects. Both Korean dramas and Japanese dramas do that, but they do it in a slightly different way. But I love it when it happens in Korean dramas, and I really wish more Japanese dramas and Japanese like movies leaned into it more, because the way that they do comedy is so unique but so funny in like the cheesiest, hammiest way. And I really really love that, and I wish that they would lean into that more, because when they try to do the other version of it, it's just like it doesn't play as well, because like the like Japanese culture and the language itself don't lend itself very easily to like the other types of comedy that is more subtle. Like I love when it's like the more obvious, like over the top comedy. I think it's so funny, and I think that Japanese shows and writers and directors and producers, like I feel like they do that kind of comedy really well, and I just wish that they would do it more. But anyway, not the point. The point is she had really good reactions, not just during those type of comedic moments, but also just listening to Teo talking and taking in what he said and then reacting to it. She had really good reactions that like felt genuine and connected to what was happening in the moment, but they were also very long reactions, which to me is important because Teo, the actor who plays Teo is Korean, the character's Korean and the actor's Korean, right? And as far as I can tell, I don't think he like fluently speaks Japanese. I think he probably learned enough to get by with the drama and like studied his lines really really thoroughly, so that way he understood what he was saying and what the other characters were saying to him, right? You have to do that when the script is in your native tongue. You have to already do that, but like I can't even imagine trying to do it in another language that you don't fully understand. But anyway, but she had to give him enough time to let his brain process what was happening in the scene, because as much work as you put into something, the whole goal of it is you put so much work into the scene that you're performing that you can then not throw away, but let go of all that work. And so that way you can live in the moment with that person. But even so, it's still in a language that is not his native tongue, right? So he needs more time to process what's happening in the scene to be able to translate in his brain what's going on. And her really long reactions that still felt genuine, they didn't feel forced, were really integral to let him have the time he needed to do his own acting work in the scene. And so I really really appreciated that, and I think she did a really good job with it. And she also just had to her father in the show, again, first episode is fair game as usual, so anything that I say here that's related to the first episode, I don't consider it as spoilers. Yeah, if that bothers you, sorry. Her father is paralyzed. He basically like had two strokes, I think is how they explained it in the show. And so he can't move anything. He can't speak. He can't move his body. He can't really even move his face. He can move his eyes essentially, and like maybe his eyebrows a little bit. I can't even remember if he did or not. But that's how they explain it in the show. And so he can't really give a ton to her for her to react off of, because she can read thoughts. The way it works in the show is when her and her father have scenes together, we hear a voiceover, and that's what she's reacting, like that's what her reactions are for. But I don't know if on set he had already voiced over those lines, and so they were just playing it while the scene was running, or if someone was reading the lines off screen so that she would have something at least to react to, because we still have to keep the same pace, you know? But like it's really hard to act to someone who can't really give you that much back. But she did a really good job with it. And he was still giving her stuff back, like, don't get me wrong. But, like, she did a really, really good job with having to act in that situation as well. And also reacting to the thoughts that other people were having. Because for a majority of this show, like, the people she's talking to don't know that she can hear their, like, thoughts. And so she like still had to react to those thoughts, but like in the scene technically like that character wasn't speaking to her. And so that's like something that has like some nuances to it on the way that you handle it. Like you have to react to what you're hearing, but you can't let on too much because then they'll see that you're reacting to something that they're not saying, and she doesn't want to get caught that she has this power. But then also like you need to give enough that it shows the audience that you're reacting to it, but also it needs to play into the comedy of it sometimes, or like the shock of what's happening, or just the emotions that are going on behind like what the character's thinking. And so there's a lot of nuance to it, and she did a really, really good job handling that. And from what I could tell, I haven't seen her in anything, but I don't really watch Japanese dramas as much as I watch Korean dramas, so it's not like I would have had the chance to really see her that much. But it seems like she's done like a ton of work in Japan and is continuing to do so. So good for her. She deserves it. She's a great actress and she's pretty. Um, but yeah, but with the father, like she had to kind of react off of nothing. However, I'm going to talk about the father next, who is played by Tatekawa Shiraku. And he was an incredible actor. He wasn't able to use his voice or his body or really his facial expressions throughout this entire show. Of course, he got to use his voice when he did the voiceovers. So that plays an important role. However, in the scene, he didn't get to like say it, and so he had to really literally essentially all he had to use to express himself were his eyes, the way his eyes moved, if they widened, if they narrowed. Like it's a very small amount of space that you get to work with to convey what you're trying to feel, or not what you're trying to feel, but to convey what you're feeling to the audience and what you're trying to like say and get across. And he did a really good job with it. I understood every emotion he was doing, every emotion he was feeling. Like I could see it. I like saw him connecting with her, even though like he couldn't even turn his head. Like you could see him listening with his eyes, even though he couldn't even look at her. Like you could see the I don't know. He was just really good. It was just really, really, really good. I was so impressed. And also he was just funny. Like his character had to be, right? It had to be funny. Otherwise it would be way too sad. So he was able to play into the comedy of it, still using all these restrictions. And that was so impressive to watch. He just did a really great job. And the voiceover was lovely too, but also I don't fully speak Japanese, so I can't fully speak to that. But his acting was like with just his eyes, it was incredible to watch. And it gave her something to react to, which was really nice. I would like to now talk about the male lead, Teo, who's played by Chae Jung-hyup. I actually did recognize him. The reason I recognized him is because I watched him in the movie that was on Netflix called Unlock My Boss. That was about like a guy who like, I don't remember if he finds the phone or he buys a phone. He gets a phone and there's a spirit trapped in it and he has to like unlock the phone in order to solve the mystery of the person who had passed away. That's that story. It was an interesting movie. It's not like my favorite, but it was like fun to watch. I didn't feel like I wasted my time. But anyway, he did a great job in that from what I remember. But apparently he was also the second lead in Nevertheless, but I haven't watched that yet. I don't know if I will. But I planned to, but then I just never got around to it. So I don't know if I will. Maybe I will over the summer when I have more time. I don't know. But he was the second lead in that as well. And all the articles that I read, because I was trying so hard to find out like if he fluently spoke Japanese already, or like how he like trained to do this drama, or like what it was like on set. I tried to find all this behind the scenes stuff and I just couldn't find anything. So what I did find were a bunch of articles about the show, and a lot of people were saying that like, oh, he's like kind of a rising star now. He had already done some stuff in Korea but didn't really like have his big break yet, which I can see how that's true. Like he didn't like skyrocket to fame or anything like Song Kang did, but he's still like did like when I looked him up, he still had like a decent body of work. Like he had done like a good amount of stuff. But I understand what they mean where they're like, oh, he hadn't like skyrocketed. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in other Japanese dramas doing more stuff like this. Because he did a great job. I personally can't imagine. I mean, I can imagine it, but I don't like my brain can't fully wrap around the idea of acting in something that you don't speak the primary language of. Like, it's just like acting already is really hard if you've never tried to do it in like a professional sense or even just like gone to an acting class and like learned the behind basics of it. Like, it's playing pretend at its core, but there's a lot of skill and tactics and thought and preparation and work that has to go into it that a lot of people don't realize. It's already hard on its own. To then add another layer to that, which is I don't speak the language that I'm supposed to be acting in, is like insane to me. Like, I think it would be a really fun challenge, and it also might help people like people, I've heard a lot of people say, and it's true for myself as well, one of the best, like when I was in school, one of the best, like we did mock auditions all the time. One of the best auditions I ever did when I was in school was one when I was sick, because I couldn't think about anything else aside from getting through the audition and like just being as authentic as possible. And because your mind is preoccupied with something else, you're not as focused on all the like actor details of it, and so you're really in the moment, and it helps you kind of be more authentic because of that. So people like to say some people do their best work when they're sick, and I'm one of those. I don't do my best work when I'm sick, but like it helps me kind of forget the other stuff that's not important aside from getting through the scene. And I wonder if doing a scene in another language can help you do that, because you're really still trying to feel what you're feeling while also just remembering the lines. And like, I feel like you'd have to really, really understand what you're saying because you're doing it in another language, and that might really help with the acting. Anyway, but still, I think it would be really, really hard to do. And he did a really, really good job with it. It was just really impressive. He was very, very charming and sweet, and he's also just such a cutie. I think he's older than me, but whatever. I can still call him a cutie. He's such a little cutie patootie. I loved him in this. This character could have come off as very annoying, the way that it was written and the way that he had to like the way that it was written, it could have come off as annoying, but he didn't play it that way at all. He was very, very charming, very sweet, like just a cutie, just such a cutie. And when I was reading stuff about how they cast the show, they said that they were very specific about who they cast as the male lead because they wanted to make sure that it didn't come off as annoying, that he came off as really charming, and that he played to the things that Japanese women loved. Because this is a Japanese drama, and so their audience was primarily, like, their target audience was Japanese women. And so they wanted to make sure that he had the looks that Japanese women would like. Like, apparently they showed his picture to Japanese women, like, around the office to be like, hey, what do you think of this guy, before they, like, cast him, or after. I don't know if it was after they cast him. But, like, they were just trying to, like, gauge, like, okay, what are the thoughts of this guy in terms of if we should cast him or not. And he had to be really, really charming, because while one, like, you might just find some of the actions that the character takes as a little annoying, not in a like super bad way, but just in a like, oh, like it's a little bit of a nuisance. And also because there's cultural differences. So if he wasn't like, this character and the actor himself, I think the way he played it and just him as a person, I think is very like likable. And he needed to be, because it was important that he didn't come off as annoying. He needed to come off as charming. And it was doubly important because of the cultural differences. We wanted to make sure, I say as if I was a part of the production, they wanted to make sure that the cultural differences were seen as like something to be respected and understood, and as a cultural difference, and not as something that's like, oh my gosh, like what an awful person, why would he do that? And it was important that he was likable and lovable for that, and he was. He just did a really good job. I was just really impressed, like the idea of someone being able to do that, and he was so grounded and so real in his emotions. There's only one moment I can think of that I really was like like I could feel him be disconnected from what he was saying, and it was when he was talking about something very technical about his character really loves otters, and they're endangered, which I didn't know until I saw the show. They said it on the show. They're like, did you know they're endangered? And I was like, what? Is that true? And I had to look at him, I was like, no, the otters, they're endangered. But anyway, he's talking about otters and how they're endangered, and it's a lot of like technical scientific kind of terms about why otters are endangered and like how they're endangered and what like class they're in. And that was the one moment where I was like, oh, I don't feel like he's connected to the words that he's saying. But it's a lot of like technical jargon, and even in like if you watch like a medical drama or like a lawyer drama, sometimes those actors are disconnected from what they're saying anyway, even though it's in their native language. And so I can't blame him for that. But other than that, he was like very connected to what he was saying, and I found that super impressive. A side note, I really thought it was cute. I don't know if this was on purpose or if it's like a language, like a sound thing. Like, you know, there's like a ton of languages where if you don't speak it from when you're young, it's really hard to like find the nuances in certain sounds. Like in Korean, there are like the digut, like when it's like two, like if you were to romanize it, it would be like two T's or two D's next to each other. Those are really hard for people who didn't grow up hearing those sounds to distinguish those. Like I can't distinguish them. Not that I'm not super trying hard on Korean right now because I'm trying to focus on Japanese, but like I can't distinguish them when I'm trying to listen. Or there's certain like and like there's different like vowel sounds that are similar, but they're different for people who grew up speaking it. And there are certain sounds that don't exist in certain languages. Like in Japanese, there's like the L, like the L sound. Is it the L sound or the R? The R sound. It's kind of like an RL. Japanese, they have like a mix RL sound. They don't have like a separate R and a separate L. And so when Japanese people speak English, sometimes it's hard to pronounce certain words because of those sound. I think it's L's that are kind of harder to pronounce. No, it's both because it's a mix. And so I don't know if this is because like Korean doesn't have this sound. Like I know one of the sounds that I always find really cute is tsu, the TSU sound in Japanese. When I've watched people, like Korean people try and like say it, it's really difficult because it's not like a sound that is present in their language, and it's not a sound that's present in really a lot of languages. Like English doesn't have that sound either, so it might be hard to say. It's like tsu, it's a combination of the TSU. It's not like tsu, it's tsu. Anyway, so like I can see that can be difficult for Korean people to pronounce. But in the show, anyway, in the show, let me not get too off track. In the show, when you say dozo to someone, it's like, oh please, like here, take this, like thank you. Like if you were giving something to someone, you'd be like, oh dozo, like you would, it's like a polite way to be like, here, this is for you. And when he plays a delivery, he's a delivery guy. That's how they meet in the beginning of the show, and he says dojo. Like he mixes, it's like a zh sound instead of the z sound, and it's just so cute every time he says it. It was just really, really cute. I just thought it was cute. Anyway, so yeah, he did an incredible job. He was a great actor in this, and it was crazy what he was able to accomplish. The second lead, Hanaoka, played by Nakagawa Taishi. He was a great second lead. He was still likable, but he didn't overshadow Teo. And I think it was really important. He gave a good contrast to Teo's character, not just in the way that they looked, but also in like their personalities and in their like romantic dating styles. And I think that was important because a big part of the show was highlighting the differences, the like cultural differences and the dating differences between Japanese men and Japanese Korean. Like that was a big point of the show. And he did a good job of doing that without overshadowing anything. He had some really good comedic moments. He was pretty funny. He's just a good actor. He was grounded. It felt realistic. And he had some complicated moments as well, like emotionally, and he's good looking, and he just did a good job. He's a good actor. Like I don't know what to say. He his character was important, and he played a really important role, and he did that role really well. Like he did exactly what he needed to do. It wasn't too much, it wasn't too little. He did a good job. Like I was like, dang, like I'll probably want to check more stuff out that he's been in. And then a special mention, Mahiro is Yuri, who's our female lead's best friend, and she is played by Yamashita Mizuki. And I want to take her a special mention purely because I just think she's really pretty. She's super pretty. Apparently she's like a model for like some kind of magazine. And she played the supporting role really well. She was a great actor. When I looked at her credits, I was shocked to see that there didn't seem to be like as much as some of the other actors. because she did a really, really good job. She was super funny. Her character was like a little wacky in term like they have like a little B story like romance that happens with her, and she's kind of wacky in her approaches to romance and dating, but she played it as if it was the most normal thing ever, and it was for her character, but like it was just really believable, and I really, really liked what she did, and I just liked I want to see her in more stuff. I'm gonna have to check her out and see if there's other stuff that I can watch of hers that she was in, because she was a good actor and she was just so pretty. She was just beautiful. I was like, oh my goodness. This story is like super cute, and it's really interesting. Like the premise is really interesting. The idea of someone who can read thoughts, but then meets someone whose thoughts that they can't read because it's in a language that's not their native language, so they don't understand it, but they can still communicate because he still like speaks the language. But when he thinks it's in his native, I like the idea of that, and I think it's really cute. And it has a ton of cliche moments, but it's like the classic heart fluttering blanket kick moments that are in it, and I really love those. And so it didn't bother me that they were like cliche. I was like, yeah, they're cliche because they're good, because a lot of people like to watch this stuff. Like it's fun, you know? I have always wanted to see a drama that mixed two languages. I just think that concept is really interesting and really fun, and this drama like was a good like foray into that, like a good like little appetizer into that. I would love to see. I don't know if there are other dramas like this out there or not. I'm sure that there are, and I just haven't found them. But I would love to see more dramas that mix languages, not even just in this way where it's like, oh, he's just thinking in a different language and most of his lines are in like Japanese instead of Korean. He does have some lines that are in Korean, which I liked that they did that. But I would love to see a drama where like the two leads, like it'd have to be, I don't know how it would be explained, or if it would just be completely ignored and it just have to be like something that you like leave behind, that it like suspension of disbelief, is that what it's called, the suspension of belief, disbelief, whatever it's called, if you just have to like let that go. But I would love to see more shows that just have characters who speak different languages, and that it's either incorporated into the story or just like not addressed, like it doesn't matter. Because when you're feeling like, emotions are universal, and when you see someone having a specific emotion, you can connect with that, and it doesn't matter whether you speak the same language or not. Like you can connect with that and like empathize with that and understand that. And I just think it would be cool to have shows that are like where the female lead speaks English and the male lead speaks Spanish or something else, and then the second lead speaks German, and then the friends all speak Chinese. Like, I don't know. I just think it would be really interesting and really fun to see. And it would be a cool way to showcase different cultures and how languages and cultures affect the way you interact with people. I just think it would be so interesting to see and watch. Like, it could be something set in the future where everyone has, like, I don't know, earpieces that directly translate, and so you can just speak your normal language, and then people would just have the subtitles on the screen, for people who are watching it. Or it can just be completely ignored and just be like a thing. Or it can be like, oh, well, their family speaks this and their family speaks this, and the two of them just like communicate. Like, I also feel like it's really common for people to be able to understand more than they can speak. And so like I've even seen couples who like one's Japanese and one's Korean, and so they both speak in their like native language, but they understand the other language enough that like they can communicate enough. Like even stuff like that. Like I think it's a really interesting concept, and I really wish we would explore it more just in general. Maybe that's on me and I just like haven't seen it, and it like does exist and it's out there and I just haven't found it. But I just think it's so interesting. It would be so fun to watch. And also it's kind of a dream of mine to be in something like that. So if you're making something like that and you want me to join in, let me know. Cuz maybe I'm just going to be someone who makes one like that, and that's just how it's going to be. I would be down to do that. But I just think the concept is so interesting, and so I really liked watching this play out because I thought it was so cool. I just think it's a cool concept. It's a bit predictable, like the story is, of course, with all the cliches, but it didn't bother me at all that it was predictable. A lot of shows are predictable. That's kind of how stories work. And they also circumvented some other cliches that I was nervous that they were going to like dive into, and so because they did that, I didn't feel as I didn't feel bothered by the fact that it was predictable. I liked it. It was nice. And it was an easy watch. So I'm gonna get into the spoiler section now. And if you are at all interested in this, please don't listen to this part because I'm like I'm spoiling like basically the spoiler section for this particular episode is just me talking about the ending essentially. So if that's going to bother you, please watch this or check the first episode out and then come back and watch this if you're not interested. I don't know. It's literally only 10 episodes, but if you also don't care about spoilers, then feel free to listen. Anyway, spoiler section ahead. Okay. I was really, really nervous that the second lead was going to become a huge problem, and I'm really glad that they didn't play it that way. Sometimes I want a drama that just is more easygoing. Like, it still has problems because dramas, we don't watch things that don't have problems in them because it's not as entertaining to watch. There has to be a problem, and there has to be, like, someone trying to find a solution for it. That's just how stories work. But I sometimes like dramas where the problems don't feel as big and don't feel like so stressful because sometimes I don't want to feel that. And so I really appreciated that this drama didn't make it this whole big thing. Like, it was definitely an issue for a little bit, but it wasn't like a super long drawn out thing, and they didn't play it up. It wasn't this horrible, horrible, awful thing, and then they could never be friends again after. I liked that they didn't make it as big of a deal as they could have, because that's not what I wanted from this drama, and I don't think that's what the purpose of this drama was and what this drama was about. And so I really appreciated that the second lead didn't become this whole big, like, crazy thing, because I was like, I don't want to deal with that right now. I was also really nervous that I can't remember her name. I think Min Hana, I think was her name, the Korean woman that's in the show. I was so nervous that she was going to become this whole thing and it was going to be this whole like love square or triangle or whatever shape it was going to be thing. I was like, please don't do this. Like, I think it was right after we'd gotten through the whole second lead issue, and then I was like, oh, good, we're in the clear. We can have a little fun time. And it was like, nope, this lady showed up, and I was like, no. And then also I was like, she's so much older than him too. Like, in the story, she didn't look older than him. But in the story, her character was so much older than him, and I was like, this is so weird. Like, I don't like this. I was just really upset that it was going to be the whole competition thing, and I'm really glad it wasn't. Even though she did cause some issues towards the end, it was out of concern and care and love for him, not in a romantic way. And so I appreciated that that's how they went about it instead of like, ooh, another love rival. Like, I liked that that wasn't what happened because I was like, I was gonna lose it if that was how it went. I really felt for her. This is just like a thing I want to say. I just really felt for her when she was trying to decide between her love and her father. Um, but I was just like, that, like, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. Because that's crazy. That's a crazy decision to have to make. To not be able to hear your father ever again or to not be able to be with the person you love. I was like, that's crazy. But the thing that I didn't like about the whole show is how big of a problem it was of her thinking that she was going to cause Teo's death because of the book. I liked that the book from the beginning gave us some foreshadowing. I liked that they had the bubbles, and I liked that they showed her holding her ear. And like, I liked that that was a whole foreshadowing tool that they used. And it was cute, and they had cute moments with it. I really, really liked that. Like, with the little, like, the red ribbon and the pinky promising and like her, I really liked that tool. I didn't like that it was became this whole problem, and that was like basically how the like biggest conflict came about, was because at the end of the book she like kills him. She thinks she's the reason for her, the person she loves, to die. And I hated that that was the focus of the whole thing at the end, because I was like, it just, like, it didn't make enough sense to me. I was like, okay, in the book, yes, some of the predictions came true with the turtle and the thunder and all of that from the book. But it was like, these are just coincidences, and just because that's how it worked for her doesn't mean that's how it's going to work for everyone who has this power. And also because there was like the legend of the other people who had the power, I was like, why aren't we going off of this legend stuff instead of just this one woman's experience who wrote this book? Like, it just really bothered me that that was the whole issue. And like, I just really, it didn't make sense to me, and it made me really mad that it was like such a big deal. I get it, and then that's where the story needed to go, and like, it does make sense story-wise. I get it. I do. It was just very annoying to me. I was just like, why is this a problem? Like, if I were in that position, I would have been like, okay, well, just because it happened to you doesn't mean it's gonna happen to us, so we're gonna take our chances and run with that. I just was like, okay, whatever. But I get it. I get why they had to do that. I really liked the ending, although it took us a minute to get there. I really liked the ending. I liked that they went back and showed like all of his thoughts, because throughout the whole show they didn't, I'll talk about this more in the non-spoiler section too, but throughout the show they didn't translate his thoughts during the show until the very end that were in Korean. I like that they went back and like showed all the subtitles for all of his thoughts. I like that they did that. It like, and it brought us back through the journey of like their love story, and then they had their little kiss. That was really cute. And then I liked at the very end where it cut to the time jump where they cut to 1 year later, and we got to see kind of everything being wrapped up, like the B-side love story, you know, having their little closure with the 2 rings, and it was like really done in a really cute way. I really liked that. And then Minhana and our second lead, Hanaoka, kind of having a little thing, and him like kind of like him being the one that was the reason where like, oh, you don't mix work and like private life, like we don't mix that, but then him like making little stuff and be like, hey, after our meeting, you know, the cherry blossoms are in bloom, would you want to go with me? Like I liked seeing not only that they were kind of making a connection, but also that he had grown a little as a person to be like, okay, we can have a little bit of fun while we're at work, you know. I thought that that was sweet. And then the very, you know, the 2 fathers, right, because it was kind of like his adopted father almost, and then her father like becoming friends and like hanging out a little bit, and then the 2 of them in Korea was really really cute to see, and her speaking Korean, I loved that. I loved, it felt like, oh, like now it's her turn to get to learn a little bit, you know. It just, it all felt right. All the puzzle pieces felt like they fit together and that were perfect. And I really 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 liked the ending. I thought it was really good, and it was a sweet way to do it. It was cute, and it was just really satisfying. I really really liked it. Okay, no more spoilers. Spoiler section over. What I will say is though that I really did like the ending. It was very cute and very satisfying. So if you, I know I'm repeating myself from the spoiler section, but you know, just so people know, the ending was good. So don't worry about that. Um, like I said, I couldn't find a lot of behind the scenes stuff because I was trying to find out like how that worked, just because it was 2 languages and because it is something I'm interested in. Like I would like to be in a film or a show or like a mini series that does a similar concept where it's different languages being spoken by the different actors. I think that would be really fun and cool, and whether I just get to be invited to be a part of something like that or it's something that I have to go set out and do myself, like I want to make that happen at some point in my life. Maybe when I have more language under my belt, like when I can understand a little bit more. But because of that, I was trying to do more research on like, okay, well, how did this happen? How did it come about? Like, what was going on? How was it made? And I couldn't find like really any behind the scenes stuff, which was kind of disappointing. What I did find, like I said, were a ton of articles about the whole show. And so when I looked it up, I saw that there were a lot of Korean producers and Korean staff that were on the show, which I think was really vital and really helpful in making sure that this show didn't come off as offensive and also came off as like authentic for what they were trying to do. Their goal, when I was reading it, this was their goal. Their goal was to have people live like play out a romance vicariously through the show, specifically having Japanese women, because the show is a Japanese show and their target audience was Japanese women, to have Japanese women like basically live out the Korean dating fantasy of their dreams. That was like basically their goal of the show. And I think that they achieved that. I think they did a really good job with that. I think the fact that there were Korean staff and like producers and hopefully in the writer's room as well, that were a part of this team, I think that would played like really a vital role, because it could have gone very wrong. It could have been absolutely not what they were going for, but it was, and I think they accomplished what they were trying to do. And if you look at the show with that knowledge of like what their goal was, I think it makes like the whole show makes more sense. And like I truly do think that they accomplished what they wanted to. They during the show, when Teo is thinking, because he thinks in Korean, when he was thinking in Korean, they didn't translate it, like they didn't put subtitles for those parts. And a part of the reasoning was, I think like story-wise it's good because you're supposed to be identifying with the female character, especially if they're trying to have the women live out, like basically date Teo through this character like vicariously while watching the drama. You wouldn't understand what he's saying, and so it makes sense that you as the viewer wouldn't have subtitles to know what he's saying when our female lead doesn't know what he's saying. But another thing that they were trying to do is they were trying to garner more understanding for like Korean culture and like kind of hop on that Hallyu wave. And the like what I saw when I was reading articles is that a lot of people were like trying to like look up Korean, like the language Korean, and trying to figure out what he said and trying to like learn a little bit more about the language. And that's part of what they were trying to do, and I think that that was a really smart way to do that. It was engaging, it still made sense with the story, and it was fun. Like even when I was watching it for the first time with my mom and they didn't translate it, I would pause it and translate for her with like what little knowledge. I was like, I think he said something like this, or like when I did know what he said, I'd be like, oh, he said something like this. I thought that that was really cool. It was a good, engaging way to get people more interested in the language, and that was one of their goals, kind of, for the show. Um, it was interesting the way that they went about it, and I think they accomplished what they wanted to. They did what they wanted to. They showed the cultural differences and what it would be like, and like let women live out their fantasies. Like they did a really really good job with it. So would I recommend this show? Absolutely, I would recommend the show, as long as you don't mind the cheesy and like hammy comedic side of like what Japanese dramas can do. If you don't mind that, then I think you should go for it. I think the premise is interesting, um, and the cliche stuff that is in it has a purpose, and it was fun to watch. And so, like, I would fully recommend this. Also, it's only 10 episodes. They're each maybe an hour long at most. Um, I think it's worth your time, and I really enjoyed it. So I would recommend it. I would fully recommend it. Um, I specifically wanted to talk about this show during AAPI month. One, because I finished it within like the last month, and two, because I think like it's important that like the goal of the show is important to talk about during this month. It's really important to always recognize that being Asian American, um, it's not we're not a monolith. We're not the same, and within East Asians, right? Because that's kind of what I'm focusing on, there's cultural differences. There's a lot of differences there. We're not a monolith. We're not the same. We have cultural differences. We speak different languages. And I think that's important to highlight. And also, it's important to, like, the show, one of the big points of the show was they wanted people to understand these cultural differences and these dating differences and to accept those, and to not just be like, oh, it's someone being rude and doing bad things. And instead to be like, recognize that, oh, that's a cultural difference and that means this and that's why they did it. They didn't mean any harm by it. That was a big point of what they were trying to get across by making the show. When I was reading, like, that's what the producers were saying about it. And I think that they did a good job. They wanted to show the cultural differences in the hopes that people would be more understanding of each other. Because again, Asians are not a monolith. We all have different cultures. Um, it's like, if you have seen other shows like this, kind of like another that's sort of similar, but it's a reality show, a reality dating show. It's called Love Like a K-drama. They had Love Like a Japanese drama, and then they made Love Like a K-drama, which is a bunch of actors, but this time it was Korean men and then Japanese women who are all actors acting in scenes together, and then you all audition with different partners, or sometimes the same partner, depends, and you kind of fall in love. And if you book the audition, you get to kiss, and you film the audition, and you have something for your reel, basically, is the premise of the whole thing. And they were showing like the differences. It showed the differences between Japanese and Korean culture and dating culture, and like how that works differently for them. And this is another show like that they wanted to kind of give viewers more insight into what those differences are and what they mean and why they exist. And also like learning more about Korean culture and the language. Like they had a lot of Korean food that was involved, and like there were a lot of things that like I recognize because I've watched Korean dramas and there are cliches in these dramas, but that, you know, maybe people like Japanese people who this show was targeted at wouldn't recognize those as cliches, or wouldn't recognize why those things are happening, like for dating things. Um, like being like, oh, like giving someone something and be like, oh, I picked it up on the way. Like, you know, if you were taking it literally, which a lot of, I feel like a lot, because of the language, a lot of Japanese cultures, like you take things kind of literally, or like it would come off as offensive. But then they explain like, oh no, it just means like he's just trying to be like, oh, I just got it, like whatever, like it's not a burden that I got this for you, like, oh, I picked it up on the way, like don't worry about it. They really wanted to focus on making sure that there was more acceptance around different cultures and dating cultures, even within East Asian culture, which I don't know, is that even a culture? Because it's made up of different people who have different cultures and different backgrounds. And there are some similarities, sure. And they talked about that too in the thing. They were like, in the thing, in the article that I read, they were like, yes, there's some cross culture things that happen. Like there are references that, like, oh, like these are things that are common across our cultures. But there's also some big differences too, and highlighting that and showing that it's good to be accepting of those things. Like that's part of what the show was for, not just, I mean, a big part of the show was being like, oh, look, these women live out their dreams, right? Which they definitely did. I really loved it. But they also wanted to highlight, like, here's things that are the same, here's things that are different. Isn't it amazing that people who are from different backgrounds and cultures can coexist and do their best to understand each other and, like, still live with each other and not cause issues and have that not be a problem. I liked that. The one thing that I did see where some people were concerned that it would lead people to be like, oh, well, all Korean men are just, like, really amazing, because they only showed the good parts because it's a drama and it's fake and it's acting. So they're only going to show the good parts. But I saw a lot of people be like, well, no, because, like, you know, most people know when going into a drama, like, oh, this is all fake and these are showing the best parts. It's not like this is real life, you know? But that was one of the only concerns that I saw about this whole thing. Yeah, I don't know if any of that made sense. I feel like I just ranted a bunch. TLDR, from the beginning, they kind of have one of their main themes, which is that life is what you make of it. So in the very beginning of the show, they have this scene where our female lead is a little girl and with her father, and I think it's when her mother has recently passed, or maybe on an anniversary of when her mother has passed, and she doesn't want to eat, and he presents her with coffee and chocolate, and she's like, oh, well, I can't have coffee because it's so bitter. And he's like, well, you know that chocolate and coffee are made with, like, the same, like, this chocolate and this coffee are made with the same kind of cacao beans or whatever. And she's like, oh, really? And then she tries it and it's bitter, and then she eats the chocolate and it's sweet, and he goes, life is like this. You know, you can make it sweet or you can make it bitter. Like, whatever you're given, you can either make it sweet or you can make it bitter, and that's up to you and that's your choice to make. And so basically the whole theme of the show is, like, life is what you make of it. You can make it sweet or you can make it bitter. Whatever you're presented with, you can choose what you do with that. And I think that that's an important lesson to just carry with you throughout life, because it's true. Like, it will be what you make it. That's just how it is. And then the other important, I think, lesson learning from this is that, like, it's impossible to fully understand another person and what they're thinking and where their heart is at. If you can do your best to understand them even just a little, to understand each other even just a little bit, that in itself is a miracle, and it can make the world better. Just trying to understand each other a little bit more can make things that much better. And I think that that's an important lesson to learn and to talk about. Yeah. This was way longer than I thought it was going to go, but I really, really liked this drama. Please, please go watch it if you haven't, and if you have access to it, I highly recommend it. I think it's so fun. And also, I just think it's fun to hear different languages, and when they were two different languages in the same show, I was like, yeah, like, I love it. I don't know why. My ears, I love it. I love hearing different languages being spoken. Anyway, that's all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching and staying for this whole thing, if you stayed for the whole thing. I hope you have a lovely rest of your morning, day, evening, night, week, weekend, whatever it may be for you, and I will see you next time. Love, Mikaela. Bye!